Hey everyone, Karnak, Star Wars Armada Explained. Hey, we finally are here, the release of the new expansions for Star Wars Armada. I'm going to start off with a card I had requested first before some other stuff. I'm going to be covering these expansion cards as quickly as I can without rushing through things. Still have to research a lot, but let's start off with the first card here, the Commander for the Empire, the new one with the onager. General Romodi, Romdomni, Mitt Romney. Star Wars names, they're hard. I've covered that many times. So, General Mitt Romney here. I'm not being political, it's a funny joke. So, Romodi, I'm just going to call him Romo. He's Romo. So his card is a Imperial Commander for the Empire. You'll see there in front of his name, a little dot or bullet point signifies he is unique. You can only have one General Romo in your fleet. He is faction specific for the Empire only. He's only 20 points. Hey, another cheap commander for the Empire. That's always nice. His card reads, while a friendly ship is attacking a ship, if the attack is obstructed by a ship or obstacle, the attacker does not remove a die, even if the attack is also obstructed by a card effect, and may add one red die to the attack pool. So some people are confused about this card, and I can see why, because they read the words and they're like, I don't understand, it doesn't make sense, it does or it doesn't work, I don't know, and it all makes logical sense. The card makes logical sense, and once you sit down and think about it, you're like, oh yeah, that I don't know how this can be super confusing, but some people are confused. Let's go through it. So, in basic terms, how does his card work? Let's take the onager here. Let's say in a typical situation, we'll say that there's a station blocking line of sight from between the onager to the Liberty. And let's see here, should be at long range. Jumping up a little short. So we're at long range. Now, depending on what version of the onager that you're running, we're going to say this is the one that throws, oh gosh, I don't know. Let's use the Star Destroyer version. It's throwing 2 red dice. So in order to make this attack through obstruction, through this obstacle, you pick up your attack pool and say, okay, the attack is obstructed. I have 2 red dice. I have to remove a red die. Now I'm only throwing 1 red die. That's typical for attacking like that. Rami's case is different. Instead of saying, oh, I have 2 red die, I need to remove 1, now it's, I have 2 red die, and the attack is not obstructed, or even, the attack is still technically qualifies as obstructed, but I don't lose a die for this attack. Instead, I will be able to add a red die into the attack pool. So that is, in the basic terms, how it works. It doesn't matter if it's an obstacle. It doesn't matter if it's another ship you've got in front of you. It doesn't matter if you've crammed in 15,000 different obstacles and ships. It doesn't matter. Obstruction only counts once. So even if there's another ship and obstacle in the way, it's obstructed. Yes or no. Yes, I don't lose a die from obstruction, and I'll be able to add a red die. If there is no obstructions at all, though, you don't get his benefit. Again, I can see why he's 20 points. It's like, oh, if you can really leverage those obstructions, you can add those extra dice in, and you can leverage that. If you aren't able to leverage that, you aren't capitalizing on the whole reason why you're bringing this guy. So that is him in a nutshell. As with everything, there's caveats and there's little timing things. You'll see I've got some other cards out on the board. Let's talk about when does his dice get added. So I, for the longest time, just because I didn't really look at his card, and when I would play test him, it was just like, oh, it's obstructed, add a red die, chuck the red die. So if you compare him to somebody like Admiral Akbar, though, and as we've discussed with Admiral Akbar, is, remember, his effect is, you can add 2 red dice to his attack pool. Again, that's not adding 2 red die to the initial attack pool to make the initial attack. Otherwise, then Rebel ships would be able to attack at long range with blue dice and other crazy things going on. So remember, the add effect, which is the same from Romdom, it's not, oh, it's obstruction, throw a red die into the initial attack pool. I mean, I guess technically you could, but I wouldn't recommend it. So to follow the proper order of sequence for this is I have 2 red dice, the attack is obstructed. Instead of losing a die, I keep my red die. I have 2 red die, I throw them. I roll my initial attack pool. Then, because Romney's an add effect, then you can take a red die and then roll it into the attack pool after that. That is the technical timing for him. Now you may ask, why does that even matter? Why would I even care about that? Well, technically for Intel Officer, the timing for that is as soon as after you roll your initial attack pool is when you have to declare using Intel Officer. So if you already rolled that red in from Romney into your attack pool and rolled it, if an opponent absolutely wanted to be very technical, you can be like, well, that's technically, something that you should have done after that, so you skipped over the timing for Intel Officer. So maybe he'll say, oh, you can't Intel Officer. Another big reason why this is for a objective, for example, like Solar Corona. Solar Corona, the alcohol, it's a great drink. But remember, if that objective, if there are any accuracies showing in your initial attack pool, you have to remove one of your dice. So why take the risk of adding a dice in beforehand to roll that potentially is going to show an accuracy that you then have to remove because of an effect like that? It's all about timing. Armada has timing everywhere. So, 99% of the time, I think you're going to be okay with just rolling, the extra dice in your initial attack pool. I don't think anyone will care or complain. But again, that's not my job. My job is to make sure I am breaking it all down for you guys, okay? So I want to make sure I was covering that. So let's go ahead and get these fools out of here. We don't need them anymore. How does Romney work with Salvo? So remember, Salvo, the new defense token in this game, I'm not really going to get into it here exactly what it does or doesn't do. In a nutshell, it allows you to make a counterattack just like essentially the counter keyword on a squadron. You can spend that defensive token and you can shoot back with your printed rear armament. So some people have been asking, well, what happens if I use Salvo and the attack is obstructed? So remember, Salvo follows all the same logic that the attacker made against your ship. The same thing is applied back to the attacker. You're attacking whatever hull zone they attacked from, and you're following the same line of sight limits. Okay. So for when you are making this attack, if the line of sight is obstructed, instead of losing a die from obstruction, you don't lose a die. But remember, for Salvo, you can never add dice to a Salvo attack. Not ever at all, period. Don't even ask. You cannot add any dice. So he still gets some benefit because even if your opponent obstructs himself, you're not losing a die on the Salvo attack. So that's still some small benefit. Maybe your opponent lost a die, you don't lose a die. So that is how Salvo in Romney works here. What about dust clouds? Well, dust clouds are not or in this case for ships, it technically doesn't obstruct. Rather, technically, I guess you could qualify that there's obstruction there, but for how dust clouds work is if you draw a line of sight across it trying to attack something, ship to ship or ship to squadrons, pretty much ship to any target. If it traces across the dust field, the attack is immediately canceled. You cannot make the attack, or rather, you just can't attack. So that doesn't work with him because you can't make the attack anyway. So there's no point. You can't add or take away any dice because the attack pool never can even be picked up because you trace line of sight across the dust field. Okay, let's talk about some of the part here in the middle of his card wording that says about, if the attack is obstructed by a ship or obstacle, the attacker does not remove a die, even if the attack is also obstructed by a card effect. So this is where people are getting the most confused, because then they're saying, well, what about early warning system and Monferifat and General Kraken? Like, this is a hard counter to those. No. Okay, you got it all backwards. Those cards work just fine by themselves, okay? So if, for example, we'll say that General Kraken is in effect, these two rebel ships are going speed 3. If you go to shoot them, you will still lose a die because it is granting obstruction based on a card ability. Okay, General Kraken, Monferifat, early warning system. So if you're shooting at a ship that either got Kraken or Ferrifat, they're obstructed if they're speed 3 or higher, you lose the dice. You do not get any bonus dice. If you're shooting a zone that has the early warning system chaff token on it, that's obstruction granted by that card effect, you lose a die. You don't gain any die. Okay? So again, being clear, these cards work by themselves. What people are getting caught up on now, this is how this now resolves. There's a reason why this wording is laid out on this card. So we'll say, for example, that this Liberty has Kraken, it's going speed 3, and you go to shoot at it, and you're drawing not only line of sight through an obstacle, but you're also shooting the ship that's at speed 3. So in this situation, because the attack is also obstructed by an obstacle, or if you had a ship in the way, it's like, okay, you've got these card effects from Kraken, Monferifat, or EWS. Doesn't matter. The ship or obstacle I'm tracing line of sight through, that essentially is taking precedence. That is, I'm no longer losing a die, and I can now add a die. Okay? Because again, read the card. If the attack is obstructed by a ship or obstacle, the attacker does not remove a die, even if the attack is also obstructed by a card effect, which currently we've only got the 3 card effects, but I'm sure similar will prop up in the future. So it doesn't matter if that ship is also obstructed by Kraken, Monferifat, and EWS. Is it also being obstructed by an obstacle or another ship? Yes. Romney triggers. If there is no other ship or obstacle in the way, and you're trying to make that attack and they've got those card abilities, Romney does not trigger, you still lose a die. I think I've kind of covered it. I think you guys get the idea behind this now. But of course, if you feel like I didn't go into enough detail on that or explain that thoroughly, please leave a comment. Let me know. Otherwise, that's the general. He's not anything super crazy, super hard. What a lot of people like to do with the onagers is they like to just kind of throw their Gazantes, turn them and fly them in front of their onagers, especially if they're lined up on target, so they get that bonus die when they're making, for example, their attack at beyond long range with their ignition attack. Because he does work with the ignition attacks if there is an obstruction being drawn from the onager to the target he's trying to attack. So, but that's the general. I'm not aware of any other crazy things going on, any other special things that I should be letting you guys be aware of. Of course, again, you see anything, know anything, mention it, leave a comment, I'll answer it. You guys are fantastic, and hey, I'll see you all next time.